Hopefully what a touch more ends up doing is just constantly asking the question, why? Why is this done this way? And then trying to like frame things around that instead of falling into a mold, falling into the cookie cutter.
How can we just look at things from a different perspective? Maybe, an event, how is it for this group of people? I think that hopefully would be our differentiator.
A lot of times in our worlds, we just kind of do what was done before us. We don't really ask questions. It's just, this was the template, you follow this. And when you start to pull back the curtain, when you start to question these things, you're like, wait a minute, like why are we doing it that way? This doesn't really work for me, this doesn't work for you, it probably doesn't work for a lot of people out there.
It could just be an idea, it could be a thought, could be, a whole sort of way of thinking. How can we kind of just look at things from a different perspective? How is it for this group of people?
We started out just wanting to have fun, maybe bring some levity to some people who obviously it was early pandemic, so it was dire times in a lot of ways. The way I think of it is finally being able to bring to life all the conversations we have been having for literally 6 years.
We've definitely had conversations around, companies and media and just stories that we want to tell, and I feel like that's so much of what we talk about, and and obviously our jobs, but just in our life and what's interesting to us, and sort of being two people who are so deeply ingrained in all of it. And the conversation was kind of short. It sort of presented itself like, oh my gosh, we have an opportunity to do this together, like, of course. So it's like I had thought about it on my own. Obviously you've been with your company for a while before, and then it kind of was presented to us like you guys could actually build something together and have these stories play out between the two of us. So it's a no-brainer. I'm not looking at this like, oh, let's make everything in Sue and I's image. I think that's a really big one. This is not like a Sue and Megan archetype company, and that's the sort of stories that we want to tell. The name comes from us not being able to work out as much as we normally have. You asked if you had...
If I look different.
If you put on your pandemic pounds. I said maybe a touch more.
Maybe a touch more.
But
we all had a touch.
Yeah, honesty is the best policy. The whole series, honestly, was just fun, give people a different perspective, let them into our lives a little bit, but I think we were going through obviously the same thing as so many people, being stuck in the house, but also just trying to navigate the time and bringing, I think, just some levity and some joy and some inside stories, obviously fueled a little bit, but I think it was like that special sweet spot of time where anything was kind of going, and athletes are usually a little bit more guarded with being that loose, but I just felt like it was kind of this perfect little time where we got to really be ourselves and connect with people and have a little bit of fun and kind of open our world up a little bit.
What I personally found was through the making of the show, like I got really into the production side of it and the segments and making sure the music was timed right and all those things. It brought me all kinds of enjoyment. So then I start to realize like, oh, like creating, making stories, helping people tell their stories, that brings me a lot of joy.
I think the vision is always to be sort of like architecting the landscape around women's sports, and such a huge part of that is storytelling. You hear all the time like, oh, women have such interesting stories, or we've had to do it a different way, or just the creativity that is required to be a successful female athlete in the business sense. Like, but what is that? What does that actually look like? And finding those different stories, I think that's something that is really interesting to me. Is kind of like, how do you actually have to be creative? In which ways do you have to bootstrap? In which ways do you have to network across and find different allies and support, and kind of that is like the general mold doesn't really work for us. It kind of like pretends work, but not really. So I'm not looking at this like, oh, let's make everything in Sue and I's image. I think that's a really big one. This is not like a Sue and Megan archetype company, and that's the sort of stories that we want to tell. There's some stories that are similar to us that are interesting or unique or creative, but I think that hopefully will be our differentiator. We're not really working to like have one archetype that everyone's kind of like leading up to. I think the whole point is how can we use the success that we've had to, throw ladders down to other people or build bridges to be like, what is your success, or what's your path to success?
in most ways, it's probably for people who are similar to us, whether it's the female athlete or just somebody trying to find their way. Or if you look at it from a different lens, it's for people that don't have to walk in our shoes, right? That the world is set up for. And so it's hopefully gonna give them a different look on how things are for other people. I think what's so unique about athletes, obviously sports mirrors society and vice versa. And the way to push culture forward is to put a voice to it. And as athletes, we are in a very unique position in that we have cameras in front of our face and microphones in front of our face all the time. So, for me, it's just so now ingrained. And so we can now, with this platform, be that voice for somebody else. We can now be the voice encouraging people, empowering people. Because sometimes when you walk in the room and you don't fit, you've got these great ideas, or you might want to do things differently, you don't feel the confidence to speak up. And this can give people that confidence. Hopefully what a touch more ends up doing is just constantly asking the question, why? Why is this done this way? Why is that done that way? Why are we meant to present this way? Why are we meant to present that way? Why can't we walk in a room and have that confidence? And then trying to frame things around that instead of falling into a mold, falling into the cookie cutter, trying to maybe just tell stories that are going to bring you some form of success, right? Because that's what works. It's going to get the likes or the hits or the views. I don't foresee us being that way. I see us being very intentional around that and just always asking why.
Certainly progressive stories is really important, giving a different option, a different perspective, sort of using creativity to kind of flip things on their head a little bit, take what you can from what exists already, and then create it to better suit you in the future. I think it's really seeing change and really seeing people appreciate the stories that we're telling, appreciate women's sports, appreciate how hard the architecture was for so long. I feel like we have lots of stories about lots of things that are all the same. So how can we kind of just look at things from a different perspective? Maybe, an event, how is it for this group of people? Or just looking at business in a different way. I mean, Sue said it, walking into a room, sometimes you're not really speaking their language, but it's also well, I can bring my language to something. I can bring my perspective to something and take everything that I know from the world and fit myself into it in a different way because I can bring the things that I know that are missing. It's we've had to do things differently. Sports wasn't really set up for, I think, just women in general, the world in general. So to be, I think, as successful as we have in certain areas has taken an element of creativity and just ingenuity and thinking about things from a different perspective.
And I would just throw in the word unique, and not unique in that it's so different and wild. It's actually very common. It's very commonplace, a lot of our experiences, but unique in that you're not seeing it. Mm-hmm. You're not seeing these stories being told.
I'm a big fan of networking with and across and building new. I mean, I'm sure we could have gone and had meetings elsewhere, but I think there's something special about the shared language and understanding that so often has to be explained a million times over until you're blue in the face, and then it's hopefully people get it. Usually they don't. So I think that too, just the ability to have that shared language and kind of shared vision on such a broader thing other than just series that we're making or shows that we're making, just kind of how we see the world was really important to me. Yeah, and able to do it with a company that you're already involved in, people and perspectives that we already know and trust, and yeah, just kind of have, it's you get to build something really cool with your homies.
I think anytime you do any kind of partnership, anytime you're being collaborative with people, when your values align, it just makes everything so much easier. It just makes the work easier. It doesn't feel like work. When I think of my basketball career, I actually never sat down and said to myself, I'm gonna have X amount of championships and this many, awards and that many assists. And I never really said, it was always about being in the moment, being present. And then when those moments come, they're that much more rewarding, that much more satisfying. So what's exciting for me is I hope in 5 years, we do have all the things to celebrate.
Hopefully being able to sit back and oh, well, it's actually being appreciated now, not just in the interpersonal sense, but whether that's like, you know, contracts for sports leagues or media or, you know, branding around it. I feel
Changing
like
narratives.
Yeah, changing narratives and just like the whole vibe around women creating in this space is vastly different. Hopefully the team's a lot bigger and we've been able to be successful and have so many other people be successful alongside of us. I think it means just going that little bit further, digging in a little bit more, again, looking at things from a different perspective or bringing other people in so you can see a different perspective.
There's always a touch more to be uncovered. It's thinking you know a story and then going like that extra mile to fully know it, because that's where the good stuff is. And hopefully we're able to do that.